Washington. And Sue, would you like to come up, please, introduce them?
I've heard Irene speak several times before, but this is the first time I've heard her give us really hell, and it's kind of hard to follow that act. A few months ago at our county meeting, we were discussing speakers. It's always, you know, maybe we can get Governor Cuomo, or, we've got Tom DiNapoli, but, you know, Joe Brand or Schumer, and we know that's not going to happen. I think we will try for David Patterson maybe some year, Irene. But it came to my mind that very frequently we have in our own backyard people who have a lot to offer to us. And Ray came to mind. I've known Ray and his wife Lottie for several years. If you don't recognize the name of Lottie, she ran for town council last year and lost by 29 votes out of over 1,300 votes cast, which we felt was really quite an accomplishment. It was like a tsunami that hit us here in Delaware County when we saw the results and how strong the Republicans were. It was a real tribute to Lottie and to her husband Ray, who worked so hard to get her elected. Ray is, as Tom mentioned, a retired captain from the Philadelphia police force. He was there for 24 years. And when he and his wife retired here to Delaware County about 7 years ago, I think they were envisioning a very peaceful, quiet retirement stretching out in front of them. Well, the proverbial, you know what, hit the fan when they started talking about fracking, because Ray and his wife have probably about 200 acres of beautiful land, and the prospect of that being fracked or nearby, and a probable pipeline coming also near, propelled them to become activists. In addition to that, in 2010, there was the movie Inside Job about Wall Street and how that financial crisis came about. And I thought about it particularly this evening as Gary was talking about running for family court judge. And you said, you know, my job is to represent those who are disadvantaged and who are the most vulnerable, and everybody needs an equal opportunity. Well, that's not what's happened with this financial crisis. And I think that Ray may touch upon that, as well as his experiences there with Occupy Wall Street and perhaps some other areas. So it really gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Captain Ray Lewis. Ray?
Thank you, Sue, and thank you, everyone. When Sue told me I was going to be a speaker tonight, asked me to be a speaker, I said, okay, but I didn't know I was going to have the label keynote speaker. That's putting the pressure on, so I'll try to live up to it. First of all, obviously it's an honor to be invited to this dinner tonight, and it was unexpected, but I grabbed it as a chance to explain the Occupy movement to a lot of people who really don't know clearly what it was about. I also was asked to speak about winning local elections, so I'm not going to be able to cover both heavily because I have to cover both in the 10 minutes, but I will be available to answer anybody's questions afterwards about either. Occupy, like Sue said, my wife and I moved up here 13 years ago, lived the Walden-esque lifestyle for 8 years. Had the chickens, the goats, like 200 acres. I made a nature habitat, planted shrubs and trees to give food for the animals, things of that nature. And then some friend asked us, advised us to watch a documentary called Inside Job. It is not about the Twin Towers. Inside Job is about the economic collapse of 2008. And it is available online. Everyone can watch it for free. We sat down, we watched it, and it was about our paid politicians, our government agencies that are supposed to protect us, colluding with the bankers and the stockbrokers and the bigwigs on Wall Street to steal people's retirement accounts, pensions, health care, and steal their homes, leaving a lot of people homeless. And it's very well documented, by the way, not just a bunch of allegations. After that documentary was over, I stood up and I just screamed, why doesn't somebody do something? It so outraged me. I then left the den, and in doing so I passed a mirror, and I saw somebody. I could not ask other people to be doing something if I wasn't going to be a part of the answer. But now the question is, well, what do I do? Little old me against Wall Street? What could I do? Very coincidentally, about a week later, I heard of this thing called the Occupy movement. And I don't use TV, but I did go on the internet, and I went to Fox, ABC, NBC, CNN, and basically what I got was a description of a bunch of dirty people, new type of hippies. They were lazy, they wanted handouts, and they needed to take a bath. That was Newt Gingrich. Take a bath. That's what his advice was. I said, wait a minute. All these people, they're out there, and they were classified as yellers and screamers, rabble-rousers. And I'm thinking, hundreds of people just don't go into a place, a public park, sleep there without proper sanitary facilities or eating facilities, and just yell and scream. There's got to be a reason to that. So I went to one of my favorite blogs, and it's primarily about politicians, and it's aptly called Crooks and Liars. It's a really great blog, and they talked about the Occupy movement, and there was a link to the Declaration of the Occupation, because that's another thing mainstream media was talking about. They said these Occupy people are just yelling and screaming. They have no demands. They have no agenda. Nonsense. September 29th, they came out with the Declaration of the Occupation. I have a number of copies that you can take it home with you and see if you feel the same way I did when I read it. There were 23 bullet points. On each one, after I read it, I thought, wow, I agree with that. Oh yeah, definitely they're right there. No doubt about that one. After I read all 23, I fully and wholeheartedly agreed with every single one of them. So now we have me very frustrated with the inside job, and now a place I can go. There's hundreds of people down there. I don't have to go solo. What good would it do to go solo? I know what I would be called the kooky cop. When you stand alone like that, people think, well, why aren't other people with you? He must be a little crazy, kooky. So anyway, now I had that movement. But what was really the clincher, and came almost immediately, was I realized I have that uniform. Very starched, crisp white shirt, a beautiful dress blue uniform with all the ribbons and medals. Let Fox News and all the others label me as needing a bath. Let them label me as not willing to work. Let them label me wanting a handout. I could combat that image. Subsequently, I made plans to go down for a month. I paid ahead of time for a hotel in Harlem. It was the cheapest I could get, but even there it's $80 a night. And with food and transportation, the train and whatnot, and other essentials, I thought that was a rather nice commitment. Well, I stayed down almost a year because the reception I got from people was so tremendous. Everywhere I went, and almost every day I was in Zuccotti Park with a sign. My sign said, by the way, watch Inside Job, then join us. And so everywhere I went, people just told me, thank you, you give us credibility. And I automatically cringed when I heard that, because don't give me that much power. I'm not giving you credibility. The reason I'm down here is because you're credible. But I understood what they meant. They were so upset with the way they were being broadcast across the country that they were so grateful to see me. So I stayed down there almost a year, but now ever since, I'm still an activist. I have a card, and oh, by the way, going to my first demonstration was to Occupy Wall Street. And when I went there, I had no concept of being arrested. It never entered my mind for basically two reasons. Number one, my career was in law enforcement. My career was arresting people, not breaking the law and being arrested. The second reason that never came to my mind, I grew up in a family like a lot of you. It was obeying the law was next to Imam, apple pie, and the flag. You obeyed the law. And my mom has passed, but I know if she would have known I got arrested for civil disobedience, it would have been, oh, where did I go wrong? Because that's the way we were raised. So it was not in my mind. But what happened is, I started to see young people being dragged down the street in the flex cuffs, and two things came to my mind. Number one, these young people do not know how long they're going to be in prison. Will it be a day, a week, a month? They had no idea. But they were willing to give up their freedom for justice. The second thing that really hit me was this demonstration was just 2 days after the very brutal destruction of Occupy Park in Zuccotti by the New York Police Department. Very brutal. And they knew that. And yet 2 days afterwards, they were still willing to be arrested. And once they were taken out of view of the cameras, who knew what would happen to them? And you see the brutality in front of cameras by the police. So what in the world would happen out of view? Again, they did not care. They put justice ahead of their personal welfare. That so inspired me that I made the most spontaneous decision of my life. And I'm not a spontaneous guy. You can ask my wife. She'll say, oh, honey, can we go out to dinner tonight? At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, can we go out to dinner tonight? And my response, honey, if you wanted to go out to dinner tonight, why didn't you ask me yesterday so I could plan for it? I like to have time to plan. But that came in handy during my career, by the way. It was very helpful in planning strategy and tactics. But anyway, so I laid down my sign, I sat down, and the cops went around me. And I got up and went back, and they went around me again. Now, to this day, I don't know whether they were showing me respect and camaraderie, or whether they did not want to make a photo clip here and go to public of a police arresting a police captain. I hope it was camaraderie, a little respect. But anyway, I do have that arrest on my iPad. Anybody's interested in seeing it, it's about a minute afterwards. I can just show it to you. And now the person who took the picture, timing is everything. A fella got a picture of me, and then somebody heard what I said on one of the shows at MSNBC. I was on Chris Hayes, Rachel Maddow, Keith Olbermann, and somewhere I said, and he put this on the picture of me getting arrested, I will not idly stand by while law enforcement is administered only to the poor and disenfranchised, while the rich flaunt their immunity. And that was Wall Street flaunting their immunity. And from law enforcement, I know how it's really enforced with primarily minorities and people who do not have connections. All right, so that is what motivated me to go down. And like Sue said, I'm still involved with justice. I'm trying to evolve the term Occupy movement into the justice movement. A couple of reasons. Number one, people did not have any idea. What do you mean Occupy movement? And even when they asked, first of all, they wouldn't ask. They say, oh, I don't even understand. I'm not even going to bother. But when they did ask, we had a hard time explaining. What is the Occupy movement? What are you occupying? So I never really cared for that, but it worked for a while. But I think it's run its course. In using the term the justice movement, how can anybody not know what that means? And also, how can anybody find fault with it? And every single protest you can imagine since the beginning of time has dealt in some way, shape, or form with an injustice. Whether it's economical, social, animal abuse, environmental abuse, it's an injustice. So I'm hoping to get this new term, the justice movement, that covers everything, to catch on. All right. Like I said, I'll be here afterwards to answer any questions you have about my involvement. Yeah, I've been out to Ferguson 2 times. The first time I went out, when I realized that Chief Wilson was covering up an absolute obvious murder by Officer Wilson. Believe me, in 24 years, I know the situation, what happened out there. I also went down